really think, like Al was talking about, there's probably going to be this just flood of really great creative art that comes out post-COVID. People like Al and I have just been heads down making stuff, and I really think that there's going to be a flood of that coming out. And the other part is people are starved for music, right? They just want to hear.
As long as I'm thinking about music, I think I'm becoming a better musician. you know, Even if it's selling cymbals, to Guitar Center or whatever it is, as long as I'm involved with music, I feel like I'll be happy. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish now, moving forward.
Sure.
Post COVID.
I was drinking in the morning, I was up all night. My back seemed to hurt and my head wasn't right. You tell yourself to stop, but you know it's a lie. By 3 o'clock today, it's either bourbon or rye. And people tell me this and tell me that.
Hello, and welcome to Melting Pot Talks. I'm your host, Chris. Boy, do we have a good show for you today. What you just heard were clips from songs written and performed by today's guests, Al and Brian. As with our last episode, I am personally good friends with both Brian and Al, but they have not met each other until we recorded this conversation. Although they didn't know each other, they do share a skill set of which I am forever envious, and that is the ability to compose, write, and perform music. This is why I was so happy and honored that they both took the time to sit down and talk to one another about their love of music, their experiences making music, how COVID has impacted their lives as musicians, and how they plan on moving forward in these strange and uncertain times. Stay tuned to the end of the conversation, and we'll tell you how you can find more music and current projects from both of the guests today. This information will also be included in the show notes for this episode. And as an added treat, we'll end with a full-length version of Drinking Song, written and performed by Al. Okay, we have another great conversation to get to, so without delay, let's talk about it. Brian, let's start with you. What's your earliest memory surrounding music that you can recall?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that recently, actually, as I was writing some music, and I had sent a couple like song sketches to, one of my bandmates, and he made some comment about, hey, this kind of sounds a little bit like this band or like that band. And it kind of led me to think like, how did those kind of melodies or like the structure of that get into my brain? And I started thinking about what my kind of my earliest memories are sitting on my dad's floor or in the back of the car with no seatbelt or car seat, like in the floor, and just hearing the Beatles and James Taylor and Crosby, Stills and Nash. And, that's really, I think, really early how I got into music. I can remember those were some of the first like cassette tapes that I asked my uncles or my dad to like make for me and listen to. And so that's kind of really where music started for me, but I didn't know anything about it. I knew that I loved music. And then I think my mom recognized really early that I had some kind of ability or, skill of, even though I was just a kid. And so I went through a myriad of different musical conquests, as many young people do. I think I took piano lessons, and like everyone wished that I stayed playing piano and didn't. I played the trumpet for a while. And I remember, I think I was in 5th grade, and my mom got me trumpet lessons and a trumpet. And after like 3 months, the trumpet teacher was like, hey, Brian has a musical ability and it's not in the trumpet. And so I was in search of another instrument to play. And around 14, I think my mom bought me a used guitar at a shop down in Portland. And that was it. That's how I got into it. And I haven't stopped playing since.
What about you, Al? What's some of the earliest memories that link back to music for you?
Sitting in the back seat of my parents' like 1990 dark red Honda Accord, listening to Billy Joel on cassette tape.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Joel was, because I grew up in New York, and Billy Joel was like the holy grail. And like he kind of still is for a lot of New Yorkers, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're from New Jersey, it's Bruce Springsteen. If you're from New York, it's Billy Joel, or like Long
Yeah.
Island, it's Billy Joel. And like, yeah, that's definitely just like sing. I knew like Piano Man probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old by heart, probably.
What do you think was like the first musical influence or experience outside of something that was introduced to you by your parents?
So I went to well, I think I had like kind of significant musical experiences when I was really young, like 11 or 12, like when I went to see concerts, like for my friend's birthday, and our friends' parents would come with us. But if you're talking about like the significant moment that the moment that I would call like the significant one
Mm-hmm.
was honestly like when I went to see String Cheese Incident when I was like 15 by accident.
Mm-hmm.
We just got tickets through our buddy's dad, and we thought it was a joke. We were like, this band sounds stupid as hell. Like I was expecting like a Weird Al Yankovic type of affair, like a joke band, like String Cheese Incident. What the fuck is that? And then that ended up being like incredibly cool, awesome bluegrass. And it was like early. This was like in '98 or '99. I was super young. And so they were like real bluegrass then. I know, Chris, you're familiar with them. I don't know if
Yeah.
you are, Brian, but they've kind of just like changed a lot at this point. I mean, bands do that, but like this was like hardcore bluegrass at that, and it was like they were great players, and we smoked pot and like snuck away from his dad, and like that changed my life. Also, like it was all hippies there, which is my first introduction to hippies, and they're all like passing me beer and like pot and just like this communal vibe. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, music has this communal vibe too, which was super significant for me in terms of wanting to play music, because that's like important to me, is like for music to have that communal vibe, whether you're in the audience or on the stage. And like that was like String Cheese Incident, that all happened there. And that was important for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think but like before that, like I saw Bare Naked Ladies and Sixpence None the Richer when I was like 13, and that was awesome because I love Naked Ladies, and so that was awesome. It was like my friend's birthday, but like that wasn't nearly as significant as like that String Cheese Incident show. And honestly, I don't even listen to String Cheese Incident anymore. I couldn't care two shits about what they're playing now, but like they're significant to me in that specific sense, because like that show,
That was the spark. How about you, Brian? Did you have a spark or an incident that brings you back that you can?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of similar stories to Al. I think I remember I remember going to I remember going through my dad's tapes or records or whatever and finding Paul Simon's Graceland, and not knowing what it was, putting it on and going like immediately like at 12 or 13 going, oh, this reminds me of being 8, and but having a different appreciation for it at that point. So that was a big one. But I think for me also, like some of the first kind of sparks that I had that I purchased the music myself. The first one that comes to mind was the first Blue Weezer album. Like I bought it on cassette tape at like Northgate Mall and played that thing until like my Walkman ate it and I had to like go replace it, and then played that in my car until that ate it, and then went and got like the first CD I bought, and that it was that same record. And then of course, like growing up here, kind of like Al was saying with being in New York, here it was a great time to grow up. Being a teenager in the 90s, I was too young to go to any of those shows, but you flipped on the radio and it was just not only was it Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all those great bands, but it was a lot of local bands too that I still will listen to and stay connected to. And so that was the big thing. But I think there's something missing these days. A lot of these bands I found because I went into like a record store or a tape store, and there was just some cool dude who was like 5 years older than me behind the counter who was like, hey bro, check this out. And I didn't know anything about it, and I would buy it for $8 and go home, and like my mind would explode, or something. And then I don't even remember what some of these bands are anymore, right? Because they were some local Seattle band that just went away.
So what was your transition then from from being a music consumer to playing music in earnest? You said you did lessons when you were a kid, but was that on your own terms, or like when was it your decision to play for pleasure?
Yeah, I was that kid who even at like 12 and 13 would go steal like my friends' parents' CDs or my dad's CDs or whatever and just hang out in my room, with my mom or stepdad banging on the door, like turn that down. And it was a huge gambit, right? Like I would go from like the NWA record to Paul Simon to, the some show tunes CD that I had taken. Just like I was just consuming it. And that was really I have to give credit to my mom. She just watered that plant, right? She was like, "Hey, let's go find out what you're good at." And I'll go back to that first story is when I got that guitar, that first guitar, and a guitar, as we all know, you can spend a couple hours, and within a couple hours, you could be playing 25 great songs. And I sing also, so that was, I think, the thing I was missing is being able to sing while I played. And after that, it was, decades. If not more, I'm still doing this, right? Where I'll hear a song and the first thing I want to do is try to figure out how the artist played it. And that's really, once I got that guitar, that was it for me. I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I wanted to, dive deeper into that idea of like, hey, these people are telling a story through music. And at the time it was so easy, right? Like, oh, I know 5 chords or 4 chords. I could pretty much get by with any kind of song. And I started writing really shitty songs also, but it didn't matter. In hindsight now, I realized, oh, all of that was practice, and it's still practice.
Yeah, I can obviously relate to a lot of that, especially about writing really shitty songs.
What was the transition like for you going
I'm
from
still writing shitty songs. Al.
Yeah.
So what was the transition like for you, Al, getting into playing music from listening to it?
Well, Chris, it all comes down to Yellowstone National Park because I was thinking about it while Brian was talking about it, and I was like, okay, like I'm preparing my answer, like when, because I honestly, these are great questions. Like I've never really thought about this, and like so I'm thinking, you got my brain racking, and Yellowstone National Park. My family was on a vacation, and my parents had always played music. My dad has played the skin flute, also known as the clarinet, for about 50 years now, maybe more, 60 years. He's been playing since he was less than a teenager, and he's 70 now. So long time. And my mom's played piano forever. She taught lessons when she was like in high school and stuff. Um, and so we were in Yellowstone National Park, and we were like, we should have a family band. That'd be super fun. Like, let's do that. So I was like, I want to play guitar. My brother was like, I want to play drums. So they brought me a guitar, and they brought bought my brother a drum set. And I played the guitar a little bit. I took lessons for a little bit, but my brother didn't really last with the drums. So the drums just kind of gathered dust and we're just sitting there. And I'd play guitar then and again, but not really. Music wasn't significant for me like at that point at all. And then I became friends with his band, and I used to hang out with them in New York City, and like they would play at CBGB, which wasn't a big deal, even though like if people like think it was a big deal, but it really wasn't. It was just like such a gimmicky place to be. But I like hang out there and like fucking I really like their band. And then one day their drummer quit, and they were like, Al, don't you have a giant basement? Which I did, with a drum set. And I was like, I do. And they were like, well, do you want to play it in our band? And I was like, I guess so. And that was it, man. And fucking I just hit the ground running. And that was when I was probably like 22 or 23. So I had like a pretty late start to playing music earnestly, if I think, I think that's the word you used, Chris. And I think you mean like taking it semi seriously, right?
Yeah.
Like playing shows, practicing with a group, whatever. Like, because that was my first time doing that, and it kind of just all happened by accident. It feels like looking back,
Mm-hmm.
feels like kind of like a blessing. Like it just kind of fell into my lap. Honestly, because I had a big basement. And Brian, I don't know if you know, a big basement when you're like, 18,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of drummers get sucked into that. Like I think my first band was complete garbage, and we recruited a guy whose dad had an electronic drum set, and the brand was called Space Muffins. And it was the same thing. It was sitting in the basement, and so we were like, "Hey, dude, you want to be in our band? You could be the drummer." And then we ended up being called the Space Muffins just because it was on the bass drum. And so we're like, yeah, let's call ourselves the Space Muffins. And we played like one show, which was not even a show, right? We were 16 or 17. We played like someone's party or something like that. And it was horrible. I'm sure it was horrible. And that band never played together again. But I think my mind blew open at that point. Like, wow, this is fun, right? Like there's something about playing with, a few other people that I was in. And what's funny is none of the other people in that band, they all play in their living rooms or whatever, but none of them really pursue music anymore. That dude still is playing the drums. Hopefully not those Space Muffins, but he's still playing them.
That's awesome because in like one of the first like groups of people that I started playing with, someone had like a Crybaby wah pedal, and so the first song that we wrote together, we just called it Crybaby.
Yeah, perfect.
So dumb, but like we were like, dude, it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Like this is so deep. This is so
Yeah.
like this is it. Like because just like he used the Crybaby pedal in the song a lot, so we're like, let's just name it Crybaby.
Yeah. There's nothing really like playing with those. There's nothing really like playing with people though, right, Al? I mean, it's like even those early years when we were not very good, I would get glimpses, right? We would be playing through a song and we might be just like covering a song. And for, 6 bars, it would sound really great. And that was enough, right? Just that 6 bars. I was like, oh, if we practice, we could get 12 bars down good. And that could be eventually like a whole chorus. And yeah, there's something about it. I think that's really what got me, Chris, too, is going from playing by myself to playing with others was huge.
Yeah, and I will say that I can relate to the first 6 bars. If we played them right, then the next 12 bars were inevitably fucked because I was just so happy about the first 6 bars sounding right. But I was distracted about that, and that would fuck up the next 12. I would speed it up or something.
Yeah.
I'd be like so happy that it. And also, I actually have footage of like one of the first gigs I played, and it's fucking horrible.
Hang on to it, man.
It's horrible. I can't even watch it at this point. I'm so glad it's like not on YouTube because I would have had it removed because it's horrible. But it's like, it like I can't. I like cringe. But the thing is, like, all of our friends were there. It was just all of our friends, and they were so into it. So like,
Yeah.
of course, in the moment, it was like amazing, and I remember feeling amazing in the moment. But like, of course, like watching that now, it's just like absolute cringeworthy. And it's like to think you could ever be that bad at playing music. It's like, it's terrifying. It's like, it's like, oh my God.
And you had the guts to go up there and do it. I think
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like people actually like ate it up. Like people actually like just like enjoyed it.
So given where you guys were when you started, and we're going to get into how COVID intersects with all of this, but what was your path after that kind of that first initial spark, getting into playing with other people, playing in front of people? There's a decent gap between then and now. What does that story look like for both of you guys?
Let's see. I played, I think after our world tour with the Space Muffins, I played, I jumped from project to project. I had, a handful, like people I think sometimes don't realize how incestuous music is, right? Like you get your like group of friends, and there are people I still play with today who I've probably played in like 10 or 20 bands with, right? And sometimes those bands had one show and sometimes they lasted a year or two. And so for me, I hopped around a lot. I did my own stuff and would just cruise down to open mics. And I loved doing open mics for a couple reasons. One is there was no pressure. Two, I was a little bit of a narcissist and and super insecure. And so open mics were great because the greatest thing about open mics is you get people who are like 68 years old and just learned to play guitar, and it's a bucket list item, and they're like, I'm gonna go play live in front of people, and they go down there and they're horrible, but it doesn't matter, right? Like you just see the smile on this dude's face, like getting over his fear, and he's playing some like $199 guitar and it's just out of tune and it's horrible. And so I loved that I could see that guy's joy playing that at that open mic. I also would be lying if I didn't say that I loved the fact that I was 10 times better than that dude just playing like Bob Dylan covers. And so, as a young person, I would kind of like try to flex on open mics, right? Like, and in hindsight, I probably was horrible. But I that's what I was doing a lot, right? In my late teens, early 20s. I played in I did a lot of stuff where I've got kind of a higher singing voice, so a lot of my friends would have these bands and they would say like, hey, we really want to cover this song by U2 and it's got like our lead singer can't sing it, will you come on as a guest artist? And so sometimes I would do shows like that. Sometimes I'd open for people like that, kind of doing the singer-songwriter thing where it was just me and a stool and I'd play a couple folk songs, and then I would come back on the stage when the actual band was playing. And I just kind of hopped around doing that and was in so many bands that never really did anything. It was just fun, and we'd go find some bar that would let us play. And a lot of times too, it was still covers, right? We would play like 5 cover songs and then we would throw in one of our songs. And I found that kind of good for the songwriting process because you would kind of see like what people would be into or not. And then I had a huge hiatus. Personally, I went into the army and had a couple kids. And so, I think I really ended up becoming like a living room musician at that point. It's just my life got super busy. They decided to have a couple wars. And so that took a lot of my time. But I didn't stop doing music. Even overseas in Iraq, I met another guy from Seattle who was also a musician, and we ordered a really crappy Yamaha guitar from this small company called Amazon in Seattle and had it shipped all the way to Iraq. It took like 6 weeks to get there. And we literally strapped it onto the back of a Humvee and we're driving around a war. And then when we would get situated, we'd like bust out Guns N' Roses songs. And so I still kept playing music, but it wasn't until after I got out of the military, my kids got a little older, that I started to dive in again. And that was actually not too long before I met you, Chris, right? Like 7 years ago, maybe, that I started diving in again, big time. So,
Dude, that story about the Iraq guitar is awesome.
yeah, we wrote I wish we had that. I think someone still has it. We like Sharpied all over it, like drew all over it and everything. It was pretty great.
I have a Sharpied up guitar that's in my dad's house that I won't let him get rid of. It has no strings on it, and it's been untouched for 10 years, but I won't let him get rid of it because I have all my friends, a lot of Neil Young lyrics on it and just random like friend stuff on it. And it's just like, I can't bring myself to get rid of it. So yeah, that's awesome, man.
That's cool.
How about you, Al? What's your journey looked like, from when you kicked things off until when COVID hit?
So basically I joined that band that got me into music that I was talking about, and we would play in New York and it was awesome. And we did that for a few years. And then honestly, some like messed up band drama happened that I don't really need to get into, but that basically led to me just wanting to leave New York. I just wanted to leave New York. I lived there my whole life. So I moved here and I joined the first band that I could get my hands on, basically. We were called Old Growth. I think, Chris, you might have even seen us. Mm-hmm. Oh, we were, old with an E, but man, I love those guys, playing with them. They were such great guys, Jay and Steve, and they introduced me to so many people. But yeah, I just started playing with bands when I moved here and just haven't stopped.
So what was your networking what was your networking strategy when you came in? Like how did you meet bands? Did you just do it through the music scene or like through open mics or
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I worked at a Trader Joe's in Burien, and I told everyone that worked there that I played music, and if anyone played music, I'd love to play music with them. And they were like, "Oh," and then they were like, "Okay, cool, I'll keep that in mind." And then one day, this guy Chris came over to me. He was like, "Hey, so my buddy's actually looking for a drummer," and that was Old Growth, and so that's how I met them. So basically, Burien Trader Joe's. If you're down there, shop there. Always freshly stocked.
And
And
try to
then
join a band.
yeah, you can probably join a band. But also I will put out Hopvine Pub is the shit in Capitol Hill, and that's where I met basically everyone that I played music with in Seattle. Was going to the Hopvine Pub open mic. It was always a popular one, always some local Seattle like celebs like showing up once in a while because they played there. It's definitely one of those kind of things, kind of like the Connor Byrne vibe. Because like the Head and the Heart thing. So like that open mic was always packed out because that's where people felt like they would get noticed. And I think Hopvine was similar in that sense. And yeah, just kind of through work, like through restaurants, I met people and Hopvine Pub,
so
Hopvine Pub open mic.
so mostly just playing and word of mouth. Like you didn't put an ad out or look in the classifieds or anything.
Oh, I did play with a band called Supply and the Man that I met through The Stranger.
Mm.
Um, I just like the name Supply and the Man. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was clever. So I joined them, and that's actually how I met. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you, Chris. You're given the perfect questions to help me answer these questions because
That's
I'm forgetting all these details. But yes, I did. I did look in a stranger, and this, yeah, that was crazy. Like honestly, because I met so like being in Supply and the Man was huge, and that stranger ad is just so random. Like
hmm
I never looked in the street. That's like the one time I've ever done that. It's like, but
Yeah,
yes,
I think it's interesting how you bring up a super crazy point that almost everything for me in music has been networking, right? Like I'd go play a show and be standing out by the bar afterwards, and I'd get in a conversation, and then I'd meet someone that way. And a lot of times it doesn't turn out to be anything. Like I met this guy who was like a killer mandolin player. And I was like, hey man, we should play or whatever. And like sent him a Facebook friend request. And he was like, yeah, totally. And he just never really played out in front of people. And he kind of just got a little shy. But it didn't matter because maybe that guy will contact me, in a couple years and be, get over his stage fright and be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go and play music, right? And so I think that's definitely the way to do it. And then also I think you just meet so many people through people, and that's just, you know, that's really how I've done it too.
actually, and you reminded me, I actually wanted to touch on something that you said earlier, Brian, because it kind of blew my mind. And you said that you loved playing open mics because, sorry to go backwards a little bit,
No, not at all.
but you said you loved playing open mics because there was no pressure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind diving into that a little bit because when I play open mics, I poop myself a little bit.
Yeah.
And honestly, that goes for any performance for me, even now. And I'm just curious where you stand on in terms of the butterflies and
Yeah.
playing live shows today, because I just recorded last week in Portland. And it was kind of a high pressure situation because we needed to get one good take and we only had 2 tries per song. So basically it was like 2 tries to get it right. And we had paid money for it. So it was like pressure. And it was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
first time performing in like a year basically. And it was intense, man. And like, I was like trying to talk myself down and being like, dude, you've done this like no joke 1,000 times. Like that's not even an exaggeration. Like, come on, like what's going on, And it's like still to this day, it's like no matter how hard I try, I still shit my pants, even with the small performances. So I'm just curious, what
Yeah.
where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think with open mics, I don't feel as much pressure. I think I developed kind of this process early on because I started playing open mics like pretty early. I think I was in my late teens and I just didn't have a band or a place to play, and I thought, well, let me just go down here. Like I think someone recommended it to me, and so I unintentionally created this process where like a lot of the open mics around where I lived at the time were like you got to play 3 songs, right? And so, you get 15 minutes and you get to play 3 songs, or you can play 2 songs. And so I would always take 1 or 2 songs and I would just think of, okay, what is that cover song that everyone loves and wants to hear, even if I didn't like like it, right? So you said Piano Man earlier. That was one of them. I'd play Piano Man on a guitar, right? Like just because I knew it's one of those songs where I hit that chorus and everyone would be in there would be singing that song because everyone loves that song. And so I would sandwich my really crappy song that I wrote in between those 2 other songs, and it built a lot of confidence in me. I think because I would play a song that everyone liked, like "Hey Jude," right, or something, and then I would play my song, and everyone would go, "Yay!" And then I would end with like "Piano Man," right, and everyone's like, "Yeah." And so no one remembered that middle song, and I think someone told me that somewhere. It's like I think I was working at a coffee shop, maybe over in Capitol Hill, and someone who was that I had recognized from other music stuff had said, "Hey, just go to open mics and you know, after you play your crappy song, play a song everyone likes." And that's just kind of what I kept doing, and I think that helped really build some confidence in me. It also, Al, could be that as Chris knows, I have a tendency to be a little bit of a fake narcissist and get want to garner people's attention. So maybe that helped kind of with the stage fright.
Yeah, what's funny is I'm the same way. I love to have everyone's attention on me, but then as soon as the attention's on me, I'm like, oh, I have this moment where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
the attention's on me. And it's like you and that it's that realization, and then it's kind of about where you go from there. It's like you gotta just ride that wave. You gotta just like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still get nerves, especially if I'm going to play with some like another band that, one my bandmate now, he had this band project for a long time that I played in called Hemlock Pop, and he had several other really great rock bands, and Hemlock Pop was kind of his like pop rock band that he was just really him. He recorded a whole record on his own, recorded all the instruments, and I remember like he hit me up and we were just friends of friends at the time. And he was like, "Hey, I want to play a show. And I would love to have another guitar and vocalist. So could you learn these songs and come play them?" And I was like, "Oh, awesome. This is a chance for me to go play." And I remember for that, I was super nervous just because I was playing with someone who is a really fantastic musician. And I think that's where that insecurity comes in. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can keep up with this other person, and I'm playing their music on a stage in front of a bunch of people that I don't know. And we actually ended up playing a show at, I think it's called the Substation in Ballard.
oh yeah.
And it was perfect because it was a Thursday night and the show started at 11. So we didn't even go on until like
Oh,
1 a.m.
what?
And it was just the 2 of us and then like the 3 other bands and the people that worked at the substation. There was no one else there. And it was like the perfect night for me to like get over those jitters because I hadn't played live in a show setting like that in a while. And so he probably doesn't even know I was terrified the whole time, which was really out of place for me. Yeah, I guess you just keep doing it, right? Even if you're gonna poop yourself, you just keep doing it.
No, absolutely. And for me, the big cure for getting over that has been honestly just practicing. Just,
Yeah, for sure.
just and I'm not trying to lead anything, but to get into to COVID stuff, um, for me as a musician, it's been 100% a blessing. Um, and I hate to say the words COVID and blessing in the same sentence for, people who have had hard times because, I think about that every day too. But just in terms of me being able to play music, basically as much as I want, and to concentrate on the art and just like being the best musician I can. I believe that for me, practicing has helped me feel better and more comfortable in terms of playing with new people in different situations. I'm sure it'll happen once live kicks in again. I'm sure that because it's just, like just the hours that I put in, like I can feel myself getting better, and that's just helping me. So it's just like it's a healthy hamster wheel, because it's like, oh, I can feel myself getting better because I'm practicing. So I'm going to practice more. So more. And it's just, it's like more, and it just feels great. So I'm in this like really good sweet spot right now, which I have to thank COVID for, because when I was working 50 hours a week, playing in 2 to 3 bands and had a girlfriend, you know, I couldn't play 6 hours of music a day, 7 hours of music a day, and now I can. So that's helping me feel more comfortable, I think, with everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, I love everything you said. I mean, I actually thought about that. I'm like, I hate to say COVID and blessing at the same time, because it's so not a blessing for everyone involved. But for music, and for music, it's even a horrible situation, right? Venues have closed down, and like people's businesses, and but for the art itself, for me, I was playing, with this band Hemlock Pop. I was playing in another band called Kerrigan Creek, which was really a cover band that we were playing in bars and restaurants all over. And I was playing in that like every other weekend. And it was mostly covers, but we were using it as a vehicle kind of to throw out new material and kind of work on new material with both, all the other bands that we were kind of music projects we were playing in. And I had this like idea that to do a new folk rock band. And I had like probably 12 half written songs, and I didn't, like you were saying, Al, I just didn't have the time, right? With playing out live, every other week, playing with my friend's band Hemlock Pop, working and home life and all that, I just didn't have time to really like sit down and finish the songs. I think I probably maybe even said it to Chris and others, like, I think I just need to like book a Airbnb for a weekend by myself and go take these songs and like finish them and go do something with them. And man, if COVID didn't push me on that, right? Like all of a sudden I was here at my house and I didn't have an hour and a half commute. I didn't have I couldn't go play shows anymore with our other band. And so I just started taking these songs, and I took one and I sent it to my friend Ira, who is really Hemlock Pop, and said, "Hey man, listen to this song." And he's just started like adding lyrics here and adding chords here, changing chords, and then send it back to me. And then I would do the same. I'd change a couple things, and we sent it back and forth and back and forth. And then he demoed everything at his apartment in Seattle, just, with his guitar and, Logic and a laptop, and sent it back. He's like, well, man, this is a great song. And before I know it, we're like 12 songs in. And, we just never would have had that time to do that if it wasn't for all the time that we've given back, because of being in quarantine. At some point we were like, dude, we got to get into a studio and record this stuff.
How did your process change due to COVID and due to needing to be distanced, and how did that change how you worked as a musician, because you're still collaborating with people?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think I've written songs with other people before. And they always, I mean, if you look at music history, you've got, scores of people who were great songwriters on their own, but for whatever reason, when they got with another songwriter, we got the Beatles, right? And, I love John Lennon's music and Paul McCartney's music after the Beatles, but it's not the Beatles, right? And so I love co-writing songs with people, and just, going back to just playing live. But I think in the past, it would happen is you'd get together for a rehearsal, right? And maybe you and another person would stay behind a little bit longer, and you'd kind of work on a song. And that's kind of how it went. With COVID, we were separated from each other completely. So I would just write as much as I could of the song, right? It'd be 50, 75% done in my mind. And I would send it over to my bandmate Ira, and he would have like complete solitude in his apartment with this song. And, it really freed him up from me going, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did that? He was able to sit down and really like listen to the song. And then he would text me and be like, hey, in this lyric, you say something under the sun. What if we said under the gun? Because the line before that, you talked about, feeling like you were under pressure. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about it. So he would craft his portion of the song and then send it back to me. And I would listen to it 50 times and send it back to him. And so it created a really unique working environment, because it wasn't as if we were co-writing them in the same place. It was like I gave him like this, painting and said, hey, can you do what you do with it and send it back to me after you're tired of it? And before we knew it, we had something really great. So, or what I think is really great. So we'll see. I'm sure, it's, in my opinion, it's some of the best songs I've ever written. And now we're at the point where if I'm starting to, like, I've heard the final mixes of 5 of these songs, and I don't even remember what I wrote and what he wrote, right? Like they've just become one thing. And that's pretty amazing. And I don't think that would have ever happened without COVID and being in quarantine. I think I would still be playing every other week with Kerrigan Creek, and I would be having a blast, and I can't wait to do that again. But I don't think that I would have created this new band that we're going to launch here in the next few months.
Al, how's your process changed?
To be honest, I've played music with people in person throughout quarantine. We masked up, I mean, so a couple bands ended up not doing that because they didn't feel comfortable. Everyone's kind of had their own comfortability throughout this whole thing. The bands that I ended up not practicing also had newborns, so I think that was the main reason. They, it's just like if you have a newborn. Also, one of them was a nurse. It was just like, just leave it be. But with a couple projects, it was kind of like, we're cool to go forward as long as we stay masked up throughout rehearsal. So I played with people throughout, and if anything, COVID was just like, it was just like more intense because we just had more time to work on it. So it's kind of sped things up, and it's kind of been like you're in this like little time warp. It's like in Back to the Future 2, where like you go the alternate universe above the present, and it's like you're kind of just like traveling above it, and you can just like work on music, and there's no time limit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been so, but also I can totally relate to what Brian's saying, because Brian and I can tell that musically we're probably very different, but we have a lot in common right now. Like with releasing EPs. And also you said you had a pedal steel player. I have a pedal steel player. My buddy Louie in New York, who I've been sending my tracks to, and he's been putting pedal steel on top of it. And that's what inspired me to want to make my own record, was like how good it sounded just having like one more element on top of the guitar.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, fuck, I can know all of my musician friends across the country have nothing to do right now. And
Yeah,
it just hit me.
that is a thing, Chris, about music. Like you probably like maybe 10 years from now, Al and I are going to come out with some like chart topping hit, and you're going to be like, that started with me. Right. That's how the music world works, right? Like you just meet people, and that's how it happens. And, I think also I'm the same as you, Al. Like at some point, I think we had that kind of dip in the summer, fall time where COVID kind of seemed to pause a little bit. And that's where my bandmate Ira and I just felt like, hey, we're not seeing anyone else, so let's just start getting together. And that's where we started tracking demos and rehearsing together. And it was such a relief to be able to play with someone else again, other than just being in here in my room playing by myself. So yeah, I'm very similar.
I think you've been able to reach out to people that you normally wouldn't be able to collaborate with because they live across the country and they don't have time to just stop and record a piano part for your track in the middle of their busy schedule with their life going on. And now everything's slowed down, and you can make those connections, and it's like rekindled friendships for me. People that I haven't talked to in a long time, been like, hey, man, if you wouldn't mind playing guitar on this track for me, that'd be awesome, and it's like, It's just, again, music bringing people together. Sorry to sound like the biggest cliche of all time on your podcast, Chris, but it's what it does,
Yep.
inevitably.
So do you think that moving forward, you're gonna? I mean, you've both said that there's been some silver linings that have come out of this. So do you think you're gonna take anything away from this as we kind of go back into quote unquote normal? And are you gonna keep any of these habits or keep any of the lessons learned throughout this last year and try to apply them to your music careers moving forward?
So I don't know what normal is going to look like, and I need to wait to see what normal is going to look like, and whenever that is, in terms of like playing live and with projects and stuff. So I'm kind of just holding my breath. Like I'm eager to record because I feel like that'll start happening first, maybe. I feel like that's going to start happening real soon, where like studios will probably start opening up, and you can have like 3-person, 4-person bands, whatever. Um, but in terms of like playing live shows, like, I'm just gonna kind of see what happens. Um, but in terms of, I mean, this is a personal thing here. I've put my foot down in terms of working in restaurants, and I want to make a jump into having a music oriented career. And it doesn't really matter what that, I don't know what exactly that means, but I know that I just want to be involved with music in some way because that's just what's important to me. So I'm trying to make that change, and obviously COVID has helped with that because it's just allowed me the time to be able to focus on it and to be able to make a change. um and I want to be able to continue to practice like I have been, and be a studious musician, and I want to be able to keep that motivation that I've been able to have. And I think if I have a music oriented job, that won't really be a problem because as long as I'm thinking about music, I think I'm becoming a better musician. you know, Even if it's selling cymbals, to Guitar Center or whatever it is, as long as I'm involved with music, I feel like I'll be happy. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish now, moving forward, post COVID.
Yeah, I mean, Al brings up some really good points. There's probably the next part of this conversation too, and it's like what happens after. I think for me in this project that I'm doing with my friend, we're gonna continue doing this in this same process, right? Because even after stuff starts opening up, and we've already started talking about how we're gonna play live, who are we going to bring in to be in the band? Once we do start playing live, what that looks like. We've started kind of brainstorming that, even though we don't know what it's going to look like. But as far as the creation process, I think we're going to follow the same process that we have been, because it just seems to work, at least for this. We were really fortunate last fall to be able to go into the studio and record half our record. And we actually thought, okay, we're going to record an EP. But because the songs were flowing, it looks like it's going to be a full length record now. We were just in last weekend recording another 5 songs, to try to make it a full record. And, it's been weird. We talked to like a publicist company that was out of LA and New York, and we just did a Zoom call, like what we're going to do to try to, kind of get some traction and look at getting on some playlists, etc. But it's been weird. The studio experience is not the same, right? Like we have Ken Stringfellow from the Posies, who also played with REM and Big Star, who's producing the record, and he doesn't live here. He lives in Europe, but his studio that he has is here in the Seattle area. It's a small studio, and he just like really put really good COVID, kind of rules in place that allowed us to come in. And it was really just my friend Ira and I, and then we would bring in a drummer and we'd give him an assigned time. And, Ken had an assistant there who would like clean everything down and make sure everything. So we were able to stay really distant and masked up and play it safe. And so that's been really awesome, because there's a lot of studios that are not open right now, just because they don't have the setup that's conducive for that. And Ken does. So that's been really, really great. And it's also been great because of that we've actually had him help us out with stuff. So this is someone who's recorded records with REM and now he's playing bass on our album, right? Like, because he's like, well, hey, instead of bringing a bass player in, I can help you guys out. And he's a killer bass player, right? So like, that we were able to work through stuff like that. And I think it's made the project way better.
So I think that's probably just a good dovetail then, like what's going on with you guys now? Like what are you working on? What are you excited about? Do you have anything that you want to put out to the audience to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'm playing in a band called The Bitter, and it's really awesome. It's like a hip hop kind of metal punk band. Um, and we just did something called the Bridge City Sessions, is which I was talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have like a YouTube video up on their channel soon, and they gave us live tracks too that probably, if it turns out okay, will turn into an EP. Honestly, Brian, I would look into it. It's super rad. It's called Bridge City Sessions, like I said, and it's a really affordable price, and they give you 4 tracks that they mix and master, and all those are also recorded with like HD, really high quality cameras, multiple angles. They edit it for you and they give it to you. They put it on their YouTube channel, but they also give it to you and it's all yours. Like they don't try to take ownership over it. It's like they'll just give it to you so you can release an EP with what they're like. They don't give it, and we got the raw tracks less than 24 hours after we recorded it, and then we picked which tracks. Yeah, so it was very affordable, and it's in Portland, which is a great city, obviously, and fun to go down there. I'm starting another project called Sacred Janitor with my buddy Hosea, who used to play in a band called Mirror Ferrari, and that's going to be super cool. We're going to record with Don Farwell at I forget the studio, the Earwig Studio.
Earwig, yeah.
Earwig, yeah. I think that's potentially where we're going to end up, but that's, don't quote me on that. We'll see what happens. And then I'm doing my own EP, recorded by my buddy Cooper. And he's the man. He has his own little studio set up, and that EP is going to be coming out probably in the next 6 months. There's going to be a video. I'm super excited about it because I've never been able to record my own stuff because I haven't had time. But now I do, and it's such a good feeling to be able to finally do it, as I'm sure, Brian, you can relate to.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for that heads up. I love that idea. So for us, the band that we created is called the Wells, and we will be releasing a full-length record this year. We thought we were going to release an EP that's pretty much ready to go, like here in the next month or so, but we're going to go ahead and just dive in and actually record the rest of the LP. It's almost done. So we'll release that, I would say, in the spring, summertime. And we just launched our Facebook page. I put a little video clip up there. And one thing I've been doing is through this whole process, I bought like a little vlogging camera, and I just have been like shooting tons of film. So I'm going to kind of do what we're doing here and just talk about the process of what it was like, here's the guitars we used, here's how we brought in the drummer, here's how we brought in a pedal steel, and just kind of tell the story and throw that up on YouTube, because I think maybe 10 people will find that interesting. And then we'll do that while we finish the record. We're also going to record some like covers, just kind of YouTube style live covers, and always looking for stuff like you had said with Bridge City Sessions, stuff like that to do in the interim while we're working on getting stuff out there. And then we'll launch that. So you can find us on Facebook right now and Instagram. And there's not a ton of stuff up there, or YouTube, the OLs. And there's not a ton of stuff out there, but there's a ton of stuff coming, because I've right before this and right after this, I'm editing and kind of like getting videos together so that I can just kind of put them out every week. And it's been amazing to see, even just in the last couple days. I think I put it out on Facebook, and just people seemed a little starved for music. Maybe that's the silver lining, Chris. Then to your question a while ago, is like, what's going to happen? I really think, like Al was talking about, there's probably going to be this just flood of really great creative art that comes out post COVID. People like Al and I have just been heads down making stuff, and I really think that there's going to be a flood of that coming out. And the other part is people are starved for music, right? They just want to hear. I read a story online the other day, and it was like, what are we going to do when Netflix runs out of TV shows and Apple Music doesn't have any more new music? And I don't think that's going to happen. But I think one of the things that's going to come out of this pandemic is artists are just going to put a ton of content out, and people are going to be starved to go listen to it. And at least that's my optimistic view on it. And so that's what we're doing. We're taking advantage of it, and hopefully, it hits someone somewhere. And so it's been amazing, even just in the last couple of days since launching the Facebook page. Tons of people have come out and said, "Hey, I can't wait to see what you guys are going to put out. Looking forward to it." So I'm excited by it.
Yeah, I just want to say, Brian, real quick, based on what really quick at the end of that, I'm really hoping, and I hope that I'm not too optimistic, but I'm really hoping that there's going to be some sort of renaissance. I'm hoping that this leads to just like a new founded appreciation for all art, just like going to museum, going to the movie theater, like any sort of any art that involves being close to other people inside, like,
Yeah, totally.
I just hope that there's a resurgence and a renewed appreciation for it afterwards. And I mean, I just wanted to say that that's just a huge hope of mine. I think about it all the time, and I feel like it will happen, but I just don't. I'm just nervous about what the new normal is going to look like, and if we'll have the opportunity to have this renaissance, or what it'll look like. But I hope there's like a venue for it.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day too, Alan. I thought, humans are resilient creatures, right? Like, and since people can paint on the walls inside of a cave, we've been making art. And the new norm, I'm trying to remain optimistic, right? Like, I know one thing, it's lame, but I've watched a lot of live streamed music on the internet this last year. And I know it sucks, right? You're like watching it, they finish the song and it's like dead silent, and the poor artist is there like. And in fact, our Hemlock Pop and Kerrigan Creek, we've done a couple. And it's really weird, right? You play the song, you finish, you have that big build up with the drums and last hit on the cymbals, and it's like nothing's happening, right? Like, so there, I think that'll never be replaced, this desire and this kind of magic that music brings people together. But I can't help but kind of be optimistic that maybe some venues will continue to live stream live shows, only there'll be also an audience, and that will allow us to like I'm following bands in Europe that I've never even heard of, right? Just because it popped up in my feed and I was like, oh, let me check this out and give these guys $10. I used to go to live shows and I didn't care. I don't care if I hated the band. I would buy a t-shirt if they were selling them, just to support the band. And, I think a lot of people are doing that. I've heard a lot of people say every time a live stream comes up with a band that I kind of like, even if I can't go, I buy a $10 ticket just so they can keep making their stuff. And I don't even go to the show. Right. Like that's nice. And it's a little lame, the live stream thing, but wouldn't it be cool if we could go to a show, at the High Dive, and it was also streamed so people in Australia could watch it, right? Like maybe that comes out of this, right? Because I know people are getting good at that. The live streams are definitely a lot better, and technology like allows us to be way better at that. So I'm being optimistic too, Al. I hope a renaissance comes, and I hope that the new norm is this hybrid, and we've kind of learned from this. So
yeah, maybe it'll open up some additional revenue streams for musicians.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's made that weird already, right? Like, I've talked to a bunch of people. Our producer Ken, he had this band in the '90s that was a pretty big deal, and here he's still can pack out a show, but he's like telling me all these like, yeah, we've got X amount of thousands of followers in Spain because they've just followed us on YouTube, and when we go to Spain, people come out, right? Or I'm think back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this. There's no way that anyone in the Philippines would have ever heard my music. But now I know, like, hey, if I can get with a publicist who can put me on some playlists in Thailand, maybe someone will hear that, right? And you know, if you go on YouTube and look at a band, like there's comments in different languages, and I know for sure that band has never been to Austria, right? Like because they play at the bar down the street from my house, but they've got followers there, and so I'm hoping that that this kind of propels that, and maybe it will, like you said, Chris, open kind of another revenue stream.
Before we sign off here, do you just kind of circling back around for people who are maybe just picking up that guitar or just sitting down on that drum set or just got asked, hey, you have a giant basement, man, can we jam down there when your mom's not home? Do you guys have any lessons learned, any life advice that you want to put out there to people kind of getting their chops together with this?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on that. And I think it's to two audiences, and one is the people that are just starting out, and the other is to musicians. I'll go back on what Al said, and it's practice, man. Like there's nothing that crushes nerves for playing in front of people, but then other than like knowing what you're doing up there, right? Like if you don't know the chord changes or the rhythm or whatever, you're gonna be a wreck, right? So it's just practice, and practicing what you're actually going to do is a big one. And I think so for new musicians, just do it. Like even if you aren't good, who cares, right? Like this is not about packing out a venue or something. This is like there's so much that music can do, for your own soul. And even if that's just playing, Beatles covers in your house, right? Both of my older kids picked up music, and it just makes me so happy because I know that they will carry that, even if it's just casually, they'll carry it for the rest of their life. And it will always be something, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if your dog left or your truck broke or whatever other country song idioms you could put in there. Like music is always going to be there because all you have to do is like open your mouth or play a guitar. So I would always encourage people like go do it. I think for musicians, I would say like, hey, give new musicians a chance. One thing that I found myself in, especially in my like 20s when I was a little more arrogant about stuff, is if someone came into a band practice and they weren't that good, I'd be like, all right, dude, see ya. And I just wouldn't play with them anymore. And I think these days it's very different, right? Like obviously when we're working on the OLs, we're trying to create like top notch. That's my art, right? And I'm really particular about it. But when I'm just jamming with people, I don't care if a person's not that good at all, like it to me it doesn't matter. Like I think musicians can make sure that they can give back that gift to music. And if someone's just learning to play, just jamming with them, even if it's in your living room and or at a rehearsal space or at an open mic, and encouraging people at places like that, because at the end of the day, if all we have left, I don't even remember what movie, I think it was a cheesy movie, someone said like if all we studied was math and science and we stopped and reading and writing and we stopped making art, then what would we have to read or write or do math about, right? And so just remember that, like it doesn't matter if it's shitty art, encourage people to do it because it's not shitty, that's subjective, right?
I'll take you up on jamming while playing horribly because
I've told you a million times, Chris.
I'm really good at that. Unfortunately, all I play is harmonica confidently, and that's kind of like the worst possible COVID era instrument to play because it just diffuses there's a fire virus out into the world.
There's a fire pit in a lake somewhere that we should be playing around.
Yeah, I'll wear a mask over my harmonica and get it done there. How about you, Al?
Fuck, man, it's hard not to sound cliche, but yeah, I would just say like I appreciate that Brian separated it between musicians just starting off and musicians who have been doing it for a while. But I'm going to be lazy and I'm just going to say to both, just keep going, just like keep, right? I mean, I like basically like when I woke up this morning and it was so beautiful outside. It was gorgeous. And there was a big part of me that wanted to walk around in the sunshine, but there was a bigger part of me that wanted to go into a cold ass fucking basement and play drums for 5 hours, you know? And I think that that's just like something that I can't ignore anymore. And it's just who I am, you know? And I want to be someone who's like likes skiing and likes hiking and likes doing all these things, but like I just find myself wanting to go back to that drum kit every day. And I think that you just have to not ignore that and just accept that and just fucking keep going, because that's at some point that's just like the only option, you know? You're just lying to yourself. Like when I was serving in a restaurant, I was just lying to myself, you know? I have to do something that's involving music. So keep going, keep practicing, keep going, keep practicing. Don't stop. Literally just don't stop. I don't plan on stopping ever, you know? Just don't stop.
All right. So any on that note, before we stop,
Before we stop, right? Yeah. As we stop.
as we stop this podcast, because at some point we do need to stop.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any last thoughts on this convo that maybe I missed something, or that you wanted to get out that I didn't address before we sign off?
Support art. Go buy that T-shirt or that live stream. You know, go watch Al and I's videos and music, and it'll come back to you in good vibes.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Chris, for
For sure, man.
that melting pot, you know, for existing and for getting us together, man.
Hey man, we're here for you guys. This is what we're doing this for. So I appreciate y'all taking the time out of your nights and coming and talking to me. I have the easy job here.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, now that I can, you know, I know I'm going to get out in time to hit the club, the COVID club. This was well worth it. Actually, now I'm getting off in time, so maybe I can watch Godfather 2 and 3 tonight.
I'm gonna take you up. I'm gonna go back and watch Back to the Future 2 now.
Oh, dude, you gotta. Oh, I love Back to the Future too.
Yeah, and listen to Jeff Buckley.
It's so. Oh, dude, yeah, Grace, man. Oh, God, that record is so good, so good. Oh, melts my heart every time I listen to that record. Anyway, sorry.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks,
well,
Chris.
hey, I appreciate the hell out of both of you, and keep on going, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Keep on doing your things. All right.
Yeah.
Later, y'all.
Thanks, Chris.
Later. Thanks, bud.
Wow, that was really great. So much thanks to both these guys for sitting down with me today and lending us their perspectives. Like Brian said towards the end, please support your local artists. I've heard both these guys play, and their music is really special and something that should be enjoyed by as many people as possible, in my opinion. I highly recommend you take some time to check them out on their social media, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you can find them. As I mentioned earlier, all their social media links are available in the show notes of this episode. Before we go, I wanted to give a little bit more of an in-depth bio for each one. So let's take a moment and meet our guests. Brian Kerrigan is a singer-songwriter from Seattle, Washington. He has been involved with several Seattle bands that include Hemlock Pop and Kerrigan Creek. His new band, the Oh Wells, is a folk rock band currently recording their first album with producer and artist Ken Stringfellow of the Posies, REM, and Big Star. Brian is a decorated Army veteran and lives in the South Puget Sound area with his wife and 3 children. You can find music as well as other content from him and his band through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube by looking up the Oh Wells. That's OHWELLS. Al Reiter is a singer-songwriter who's been playing in bands for 15 years. After moving to Seattle from New York, Al continued to play and is currently working on several projects, both solo and with other groups. If you want to find more from him, you can search for Temple Canyon on Spotify and all other music streaming platforms. And keep your eye out for his upcoming work with The Bitter, Sacred Janitor, as well as his solo work. You can also find him on SoundCloud at Al Reiter. That's ALREITER. And to close us out, as promised, here's the full-length version of Drinking Song, written and performed by Al Reiter. Go check it out on SoundCloud. You won't be disappointed.
I was drinking in the morning, I was up all night. My back seemed to hurt and my head wasn't right. You tell yourself to stop, but you know it's a lie. By 3 o'clock today, it's either bourbon or rye. And people tell me this and tell me that. They found me face down on the bathroom mat. Yeah, I like to roll the dice, yeah, I like to place my bet. Can't seem to get my shit together, yeah. I open my eyes and all my lies are true. I look down at my hands saying, what did I do? The door to my soul is open all the time, but my head got no reason, my heart no rhyme. People tell me this and tell me that. They found me face down on the bathroom mat. Yeah, I like to roll the dice, yeah, I like to place my bet. Can't seem to get my shit together, yeah. Can't seem to get my shit together, yeah. No, I just can't seem to get my shit together. Can't seem to get my shit together, yeah.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'm your host, Chris, and this has been Melting Pot Talks. Be well and be good to each other.